My dad, growing up, he had a subscription to Popular Mechanics. Everyone remember that? The monthly magazine about technology and science. One issue from the late 1980s had a solar-powered car on its cover. I was enthralled. It was not all that aerodynamic, kind of pointy and triangular, in fact, covered with solar panels that had a lightweight frame. My guess is that it was for one person, but it was completely run from the sun. I thought this was the future. This, my friends, is a fantasy. 35 years or so down the line, we are still primarily using the ancient carbon of plants and animals to move around. The Obama administration years ago saw the inequity in our healthcare system. People going bankrupt for being sick. People with pre-existing conditions not able to buy insurance. Obama worked with the market forces and health insurance companies to give us the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. And Obama didn't mind that, by the way, being called that, because he thought, I care. So it was no doubt a movement in the right direction. Millions of people now have health insurance that did not. But it did not change our out-of-control healthcare costs. Obamacare, my friends, was a good use of imagination. Fantasy might look something more like universal healthcare, a single-payer system where there is little paid out of pocket, where access to healthcare is a human right. You know, the type of system that Canada has, that Germany has, that many countries have and have had for decades. New York has laws that ban guns in certain areas and make it more difficult to obtain guns in general. This is imagination. Countries that have banned and bought back assault-style weapons and thus decreased gun deaths, like New Zealand and Australia. That's fantasy. Someone or some group of people had to be the ones to come up with these fantasies. Solar-powered cars. Living in a world where healthcare is a human right, where gun violence is a rare occurrence. There is something very human about the ability to fantasize, to dream of a world not yet real, one that is subversive to the established order and power. Yet, sometimes all that we can do is imagine. After all, slow incremental change is good, maybe even preferred sometimes. Unless you are really, really staunchly conservative, most of us are comfortable with little bits of change. That is what the progressive movement has been all about. Change here, change there. And in many ways, aren't we pragmatic? Don't we want results and to get things done? This is the Biden way. And he and his administration has producing some clear results. And I think there is something to be said about Pinn's way, Pinn's religious fantasy, that the new possibility of what is not yet real can be fantasized about now. To think of structures that go beyond the limits of current social structures. This is part of a Unitarian Universalist unique call. Our place in the religious milieu is to fantasize about what is possible. To think outside of the established paradigms And we need to keep this sort of broad, open view of what is possible in our lives, because we can soar beyond what is. We can transcend even our own limitations. This is the spiritual work of fantasy. Fantasy is especially important as we deal with our current climate crisis, which includes a mass extinction of species. Human-made climate change is making human life unbearable and unjust. We need a fantastic view, which goes beyond a 10,000-foot view and looks at Earth from space, the fantasy of a universe view, a solar view, if you will. If we want to have our electric coffee grinders and huge half-empty stainless steel refrigerators and all the other comforts we call civilization for us and for our children, then we need to use both imagination and fantasy. We have to start rapidly moving to renewable energies. I wrote a term paper on this same subject when I was in 8th grade. This is nothing new, right? That was 30 years ago. Renewables have to go beyond a few people having solar panels on their roofs. We need huge solar and wind installations to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere. And let's be honest, there is no perfect energy. How are our panels going to be recycled in the future? We don't know for sure, but I think we will work that out in the coming years. For me, the urgency of climate change trumps landfills. It won't matter if we have too many landfills when there are very few species left and only a few habitable places for humans to live. This country, really all countries, have to start acting now on a large, huge scale. Therefore, we should wholeheartedly welcome solar arrays and farms here in the town of Canton, making sure they are installed and as environmentally as friendly as possible. Because we are fortunate to live in New York, which has mandated that by 2030, 70% of all electricity production should be renewable. That, my friends, is a fantastic vision that is informed by science. The process could be better, sure, but that is what happens when you start fantasizing about things not yet existing. Our state is leading the way, yet they are working in the established social and economic orders, which means they're giving incentives to profit-making corporations to come here on local, relatively inexpensive land. This is no doubt change, and change can produce anxiety, but it's change that has to happen. Rapidly changing climate and the urgent need to slow carbon leaves us with a shrinking pool of options. Massive change is coming one way or the other. We may lose some of the current aesthetic character of our community. But remember, industrial farming, where one monoculture of corn spreads out as far as one eye can see, is also not that great for the earth. And let's be honest, much of the arable land around here is not what I would call fantastic, and farmers are not necessarily making a lot of money. Solar farms on the edge of the village of Canton may not allow for future development, which, in my opinion, might be a good thing. Future development shouldn't sprawl out beyond our village and should be sustainably built within the existing limits. Perhaps the village of Canton will be an island of academia in a sea of solar panels. Do we want comfortable lives with lovely sight lines for the rest of our days? Or do we try to maintain a livable planet for all beings, for our children, and for their children? For Miles, for Oscar, for fill in the blank of children that you know. We don't want indigenous people in Alaska moving their whole villages because of melted permafrost and rising sea levels. We don't want poorer countries who have done nothing to change the climate bear the brunt of it. There will be painful trade-offs. That much is assured. And it is a complicated matter. But I ask of you, which choices can we truly live with? I don't care if all the electricity produced here goes downstate, because we are all in this together. We are connected, interconnected. The more solar, the less coal. Burning coal is not only inviting climate change to happen faster, it's dumping other toxins into the air, not to mention the way that it's extracted from the earth. We have free energy coming from the sun that does not pollute the water and air. I can't find any evidence to support an increased risk of fire or health concerns from solar panels, but I can sure find a lot for burning fossil fuels. Now, people can debate and protest and get all flustered at town meetings on whether solar farms are good on the local level here, but I am convinced this is the ethical and moral thing to do on the global level. The least we can do as a state, as a community, as a town, is to have more solar and more wind. And let's not cut down forests to put up solar. That would be counterproductive. We need trees. Let's plant pollinator-friendly vegetation on those same fields. Now, if I were to fantasize about this, I could see Canton and Potsdam pooling resources together outside of the established capitalistic systems and building a huge cooperative solar farm that would benefit us. I can fantasize about that. That doesn't mean it'll happen. And who knows how many years it would take. Are we going to say to our children, yeah, it no longer snows here because we didn't want to look at solar panels? We need all types of solutions, imagination and fantasy. And this goes for our religious structures as well. Hierarchical governance structures put almost all decision-making on church council and me, the minister. I know of other UU churches experimenting with new structures that emphasize their mission, flexibility, and democracy. Instead of having a council and a bunch of committees, I know of at least one UU church that has 4 councils directly related to their mission: congregational life, RE, social action, and worship. A 5th, that is the operations council, that's sort of the business of the church. And a 6th is a shared leadership council. The whole congregation has 6 councils, and each one associated with a professional staff member and a lay leader. Now, I'm not saying that we should necessarily follow that model, but it's an example of a congregation that is fantasizing itself out of the box. Dr. Pinn might be redefining the words imagination and fantasy, but hey, isn't that what theologians and philosophers do? Fantastic has come to mean good, attractive, and extraordinary, but it really means something more than already is. Near the end of Pinn's speech, he said fantasy cannot be fully born out in existing ritual structures because these rituals are confined to existing social arrangements. So to be specific, he's critical of how we gather on Sunday mornings. Why gather on Sunday mornings anymore? He asks. Why do the traditional things we do when we clearly don't think traditionally anymore? We creatively imagine new content, but still use the same liberal Protestant structure. I know Dr. Pinn on a personal level. He was actually in Canton earlier this year giving a lecture at St. Lawrence University, and we had the opportunity to have breakfast. I know that he's fading away from UU circles and no longer goes to church. And you could say he doesn't really get Canton, New York. Church is important here. Gathering is important. Ritual is important. It's easy for some theologian at Rice University all the way in Houston to critique our ways. We are just meeting on Sundays because that is the most convenient time for most people. But maybe he's also onto something. Now, don't worry. We will continue to have Sunday worship and RE like we are today. But I'm starting to fantasize about something different. We need to become more relevant, serving the spiritual needs of our community and promoting liberation of all people in practical ways. A fantastic church can't be a Sunday-only space. Fantasy goes beyond, like love. And so does our faith. So does a higher ethical relationship with the earth. I don't know about you, but I want a fantastic faith. A fantastic church that dreams big, beyond current social constraints, into bigger and deeper relationship with all that is. Perhaps this means we need a 5-year plan, a 5 to 10-year plan. So let's gather together and fantasize not only for our sake, but for our children and for those who have never, ever heard of us. I'm fantasizing that our physical space here could be a community and cultural center, a space for liberation and life meaning, where people gather to make art, music, meaning, or just to be. I think we all need to imagine and fantasize together what we want our world and our congregation to be. Together, we can create the fantastic faith. Amen, and blessed be.